reasonable shape in our countries, those countries that I mentioned. And so when you talk about the left, tell me more specifically what you mean and how you would define that particular because you're not talking about the Democrats per se, I can't imagine, or perhaps you are.
The Democrats used to be, I was a Democrat. The Democrats used to be liberal. The Democrats, when I was a kid in the 70s, Nazis, real Nazis, not people they just call Nazis, real Nazis with swastikas demonstrated in Skokie, Illinois, because a lot of Jews lived there, especially Holocaust survivors. It was a particularly vicious act. And Jewish groups, the ACLU, liberal groups, the Democratic Party all defended their right, because in America, anybody could say anything except yell fire in a crowded theater. That is no longer the position. Look, why did you get in trouble? And
I wondered about that for a long time.
Okay, so if you're wondering, I'm not. You said something the left didn't like, that you were not going to be told by the government what pronoun you will use.
We need institutions that we can respect and that hold up the standards that have made them what they are. And if they fold, well, how can you expect normal people, say, not to be cowed and intimidated by the same tactics?
Absolutely. Actually, there were two other episodes on my mind, one of which sort of confirmed my theory about what was happening in your case, the other of which suggested different sorts of motivations. So one of them was a case that occurred around the same time as yours, which was the case of a research fellow at St Edmund's College here in Cambridge, who was doing research. He was a sociologist, a very well-known, respectable sociologist. He had his work profiles in The Economist and top journals. He was fired because there was a mob protesting about his associations, conferences he'd been to, journals that he published in which other people that they found distasteful had published in, and so on. Again, done or said nothing illegal. That was one case, which again I think illustrates the sorts of pressures that I think were being brought to bear.
And what were the topics for that?
The topics of race and intelligence.
Yes. Well, the intelligence literature is rough. That's for sure.
I mean, the whole thing was so chilling, Jordan, because it was decided by an inquiry that was kept secret. Nobody's going to know what the evidence was in this inquiry. So the whole thing was terrifying. The other case was slightly different. So there was another case that concerned me, which was a case where it was an event for the Palestinian Society, where there was a chair from that society, which the university threatened to shut down because they were worried that the chair might be an extremist or something. She wasn't at all. She was a respectable academic from SOAS, and the university imposed its own chair on that. Now that was slightly different because that was responding to another threat of free speech, which is the government's legislation on prevent and anti-terrorism. But those three events were sort of coalescing in my mind around the time that I tried to change the university's free speech policy.
Okay, so let's talk about the change in the free speech policy. What changes did you propose? And then it took a couple of years, as I understand, to really get this through. And I also understand from James that it wasn't that easy to get people to speak in favor of your proposal, but that it was passed, and we need to go into that, by an overwhelming majority of the people who were concerned and able to legislate such things, so to speak, for the university.
Yeah, so I can take you through that. What happened was this was around actually March 2020, so about a year after your case, and the university had decided that it was going to put through a new freedom of speech policy. This is obviously at a time when everyone had other things on their mind, at least in Britain, in March 2020. They didn't offer a vote on it, they just wanted to put it straight through. And it was a policy which I found concerning, especially in light of these incidents. One part of it was that it said that we have the right to free speech, but we must always exercise respect for other people's identities and opinions. Now, that might seem innocuous, but of course, the word respect being so vague can be interpreted.
It doesn't seem innocuous to me.
Indeed.
I mean, it seems terrible because it just removes the first part of protection for free speech. I mean, if you have to be cautious about other people's opinions, much less their identity, well, we should reverse that. Their identity, much less their opinions, is, well, who decides when that's respectful and what? Yeah, it's just exactly. Weasel words, that.
Exactly. And the bit about identities, I bet they had you in mind when they were saying that, actually. But whenever anyone says, I believe in free speech, but, that's a good sign to me that they don't believe in free speech. And that was the impression that this policy gave off. other parts of the policy, which may not have been directly explicitly new, but which certainly brought you and those other cases, for instance, the Palestinian Society, to mind, were rules which said that the university could stop speaker events if they thought they would threaten the welfare of students. Notice now, welfare is defined again, undefined, and could be interpreted broadly, and indeed allowed the university to stop events under pretty much any circumstances that they liked, speaker events, for instance. So that was the proposed policy in March 2020.
So why did that bother you so much? I mean, you're pretty young and starting your academic career in many ways. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but it's a hell of a thing to take on, and it's not without its risks. And I'm always curious about people's motives. It's like there's lots of professors at Cambridge. Why do you think this was your problem?
Well, you flatter me about being young, but I will say that I guess there were two things. One of them was philosophical, and one was more to do with the nature of the job. So philosophically speaking, my basic philosophical position is what you might call classical liberal. So my basic value is individual liberty. I would, in terms of what I do in my political engagement, even my professional engagement to some extent, that's the ultimate and most important value. So for me, it really touched a nerve. It touched something that was the core of my identity, if you want to use that appalling word. The other aspect, which I said was professional, was simply to do something I alluded to earlier, which was, what is this job for? It's part of your duty as an academic, I would have thought. Academics are normally cautious, as they should be, but the one thing that they shouldn't be cautious about is defending the ultimate purpose of the academy, and that cannot be pursued without free speech and without the ability to question freely beliefs that are held by the majority, also beliefs that are held by minorities, and without worrying about who you're going to offend, who's going to be hurt by your words, especially in a subject like philosophy, and I dare say in a subject like yours, and certainly in a subject like James's. You can't have free discussion if every time you talk about something, you're frightened that you're going to offend the other person and then they might report you and you might get in trouble. I can't do my job. I don't expect James can. I don't expect you can if discussion is curtailed in that way. So
no scientists can, because that freedom of inquiry and the freedom to upset traditional truths, let's say, well, in a really fundamental sense, that's what science is all about. And as let's say, a creative scientist, you're always working against what's established, because otherwise what you discovered wouldn't be new. And you're always going to be facing people who are upset for one reason or another by your hypotheses and your research. So it's not a side issue here. It's crucial to the academy as such.
Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely.
But that still doesn't explain why you made it your problem, say, when so many people were perfectly willing to remain silent.
Well, one thing I would say was that I was slightly surprised when I wrote. So after the university's policy came out, there was a discussion. What's called a discussion in Cambridge University really means that you write a paper and it's published in the university magazine. And so I sent a short paper off proposing some changes to these policies, stating my objections. And I had expected, this being Cambridge University, that many other people would do the same. Because I didn't think I was alone in being concerned about this. Nobody else did. So that was the first point at which I realised. So there was no real bravery on my part, because I had expected at that point that a lot of other people would be jumping in. Nobody did. So that was the point at which I realised that I was perhaps more isolated than I'd expected. To go back to your question about motivations, I don't know what more I can tell you. These are things that matter to me. I don't really care if anyone else is doing it.
And did you face any trouble? So you voiced your opinion and you wanted to modify this document, which had, let's say, politically correct underpinnings. And did it cause grief for you? Were people outraged by what you said, or did things proceed as a matter of course?
Well, it was interesting. So some people wrote to me. In fact, quite a few people wrote to me at the time saying that they agreed with my concerns, which sort of made it even more surprising that nobody had actually said so in public. Some people wrote to me saying they agreed with my concerns but weren't willing to say anything in public. James was, as always, was brilliantly helpful. James has always been really supportive, and James has been publicly supportive throughout this process. But it's because there have been a few courageous people like James and a few others, in Cambridge at that stage, that was definitely a big help. So there was some support. I also had people warning me. So I had people saying, you might get some kind of disciplinary procedure, you might get some kind of investigation. I didn't expect anything at that stage, and indeed nothing happened to me at that stage. And I'm pleased to say there've been no investigations or anything like that of me since.
So that's really interesting in two ways, isn't it? Because it shows you how loath people are to do this because they're afraid. And we shouldn't make light of that because this is actually no fun. You know, if you do something like this and it explodes in your face, like it probably took me, it took me a long time to recover from the disinvitation, especially the way it was handled. And my health and my wife's health were extremely compromised at the time. And so it came at a particularly bad time. We had just received news that she probably had terminal cancer. And so this came on top of that. Now, luckily that she survived, thank God. But, you know, it was a harrowing time. And so I see why people can be cowed like this because, you know, you don't know when this is going to explode and when it's going to tangle you up so deeply that, well, your job's gone. That's what happened to the Weinsteins, for example, at Evergreen. And I mean, that did them a tremendous amount.
I don't have pause right now. And it just went by. I could probably come back and show you what I'm going to show you. It goes human, but over here, am I far enough? Let's see. Starts developing. You're watching the builders work, by the way, at the cloud level. Humans dump all the minerals into the atmosphere, and then the builders are doing their job, so you can watch them work. All right, so one side of the neck, another side of the neck. They're building right here. You're watching everything pull together, creating thousands of images that I could point out to you one by flipping the camera in every direction and changing depth and all that stuff. But the one I'm looking for is something that I'm always looking for, is anything outside the feline, canine, rodent, ape, human, and beast. So if this turns into a neck, which it almost looks like it does in them, it's getting more so. The eyes way up here, the mouth right here. I don't know what the species is going to be, but it's worth coming back. I can't hit pause on my videos right now because the freaking computer's acting up. I don't know what's going on. Okay, so there she is right there, or he, or whatever. You know, mouth being right here open, neck being this way. Looks like even this could be thrown into it. Now again, these are all faces in here. They're all image within image within image. Okay, now we start getting the ape or human off that way, looking off that way, and we already lose it, and we start going into these other images from this perspective, from where this camera is at this particular moment. I mean, we could go all through, and if everybody was doing this, we could go every which way. Now I'm watching it change, it go from ape to human, this whole area on the large scale. Let's see what we got. Human now it's gone human. The one that's looking right at you, the one that's looking at us in the camera. It's staying human, but it's changing form in a lot of different ways. The hair is changing. And what it's going to be doing right now is this eye is now going to join up with that eye, and this be used by a similar nose to this as opposed together. This is watching the builders work. That's why it's nice doing moving water, running water. If other people were looking, then right now we got an eye here and an eye here, still with this nose looking out. It still has not joined this other one that I can see from this perspective yet, but I'm waiting for it to do it. Here it comes. Here it comes. Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know how much better it's going to go together. We just have to watch. Again, it's image within image within image, so I can see the other set of eyes coming in right above it and everything, but I'm not going to mix that up. Let's see what happens. Yep, so now that this one's all together and already went by, now we got eye with the nose here, with the mouth down here for this very large image. Again, many others, but just to try to give you a couple.
I realized, oh, everybody was responsible. And that's when I started thinking about
like philosophy, and I dare say in a subject like yours, and certainly in a subject like James's, you can't have free discussion if every time you talk about something, you're frightened that you're going to offend the other person and then they might report you and you might get in trouble. I can't do my job. I don't expect James can. I don't expect you can. If discussion is curtailed in that way. So
no scientists can, because that freedom of inquiry and the freedom to upset traditional truths, let's say, well, in a really fundamental sense, that's what science is all about. And as a, let's say, a creative scientist, you're always working against what's established, because otherwise what you discovered wouldn't be new. And you're always going to be facing people who are upset for one reason or another by your hypotheses and your research. So it's not a side issue here. It's crucial to the academy as such.
Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely.
But that still doesn't explain why you made it your problem, say, when so many people were perfectly willing to remain silent.
Well, one thing I would say was that I was slightly surprised when I wrote. So after the university's policy came out, there was a discussion. What's called a discussion in Cambridge University really means that you write a paper and it's published in the university magazine. And so I sent a short paper off proposing some changes to these policies and stating my objections. And I had expected, this being Cambridge University, that many other people would do the same, because I didn't think I was alone in being concerned about this. Nobody else did. So that was the first point at which I realised. So there was no real bravery on my part, because I had expected at that point that a lot of other people would be jumping in. Nobody did. So that was the point at which I realised that I was perhaps more isolated than I'd expected. To go back to your question about motivations, I mean, I don't know what more I can tell you. I mean, these are things that matter to me. I don't really care if anyone else is doing it or not.
And did you face any trouble? So you voiced your opinion and you wanted to modify this document, which had, let's say, politically correct underpinnings. And did it cause grief for you? Were people outraged by what you said, or did things proceed as a matter of course?
Well, it was interesting. So some people wrote to me. In fact, quite a few people wrote to me at the time saying that they agreed with my concerns, which sort of made it even more surprising that nobody had actually said so in public. Some people wrote to me saying they agreed with my concerns but weren't willing to say anything in public. James was, as always, was brilliantly helpful. James has always been really supportive, and James has been publicly supportive throughout this process. But it's because there have been a few courageous people like James and a few others, in Cambridge at that stage. That was definitely a big help. So there was some support. I also had people warning me. So I had people saying, you might get some kind of disciplinary procedure, you might get some kind of investigation. I didn't expect anything at that stage, and indeed nothing happened to me at that stage. And I'm pleased to say there've been no investigations or anything of me since. So
that's really interesting in two ways, isn't it? Because it shows you how loath people are to do this because they're afraid. And we shouldn't make light of that, because this is actually no fun. If you do something like this and it explodes in your face, like it probably took me a long time to recover from the disinvitation, especially the way it was handled. And my health and my wife's health were extremely compromised at the time. And so it came at a particularly bad time. We had just received news that she probably had terminal cancer. And so this came on top of that. Now, luckily that she survived, thank God. But, it was a harrowing time. And so I see why people can be cowed like this, because you don't know when this is going to explode and when it's going to tangle you up so deeply that, well, your job's gone. That's what happened to the Weinsteins, for example, at Evergreen. And I mean, that did them a tremendous amount of damage. They're unbelievably resourceful, and they got back on their feet. And they were a husband and wife team, so they had each other, and that was good. But not everybody can do that, and you can get seriously taken out if something like this goes wrong. So, but then that ties into this issue we discussed a bit earlier, which is how a small minority of, people whose wrath knows no bounds in some sense can be so dominant.
Yep. So it was in some ways a calculated risk, and I can't imagine how difficult that must have been for you, Jordan. It must have been horrific. One thing I saw happening in Cambridge, not quite then, but a little bit later, was the treatment that was meted out to not an academic, but to a member of the university staff. So we have college porters in Cambridge, and these are people who work at the colleges. Often they're sort of retired policemen or military or something. Really helpful. They do all kinds of jobs around the college. Students rely on them. The academics rely on them. The ones at my college are brilliant. There was one at a college in Cambridge who was also a Labour councillor, who resigned on political grounds, which was to do with his view about trans issues. So he thought it was there was a motion about trans issues that he thought threatened women's safety, and so he resigned on a point of principle. Now that's his political activity, that's his right. I could understand his grounds for doing that. The students at his college, so these are typically much more privileged people than him. Students at his college formed a mob to try to get this man sacked. And this was so they're much more privileged people. They didn't care about the consequences for him. They just thought because he diverted from their line of ideological purity. Do you remember this case, James? And James may know more about it than me, but yeah.
I do, and it was thanks to a very brave female undergraduate. I think she was in her second year. She spoke out, wrote a public article about it. Great courage, I thought to herself, and she there was an awful lot of resistance to her doing that, but it was remarkable. She got in touch with us, I seem to remember, and I can't remember how the case was resolved.
Did you ever apologize? Did you? What happened with you?
Apologize for what?
Well, for whatever you were being accused of.
I never apologized for refusing to comply with my university's mandate. Mm-hmm. I never apologized for speaking publicly about it. I never have and won't apologize for continuing to try to have discussions about the truth. That doesn't mean that I or who I'm talking with will always get it right. Surely we'll make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes.
The truth isn't a set of facts. The truth is an approach to discussion. Mm-hmm. That's what Joe Rogan's so good at. That's why he's so popular. It's not because Joe knows the truth. It's because he acts out the truth in his speech and his actions. Yeah. So, yeah, that's a whole different thing.
Whole different thing.
Well, Solzhenitsyn was convinced that a totalitarian state could not exist unless everyone was participating in the lie, and that the most potent anti-authoritarian.
Here's the thing: if you believe in Joe Rogan so much, then as you come to this, you go ahead. I believe that he knows everything that I'm showing you. I believe that him and others. I mean, come on, Elon Musk has to know. So every time I hear you beef up Joe Rogan or Elon Musk or some of these other people that I see as purposeful liars, then it drags you right into the same category as a purposeful liar. So this will be a great opportunity when you someday come to these, and let's see if you really, because I mean, if you show Joe Rogan everything that I'm showing you here, the only reason I'm not doing a series to Joe Rogan is because I would love to call him out, but I won't get away with it. It'll be too much of a hassle for me. My videos, even just talking about him, gets my videos deleted and banned and flagged and every other fucking thing, and censored, which you're claiming doesn't happen. It only, what you're going to find out is that there are more people like me that have no subscribers, no viewers, no fan base, nobody listening, no nothing. We're getting beaten down worse than you guys are. You guys are just the what do they call it? The straw men. You're the straw men to show the rest of us that this is how it's going to go. Because if even Joe Rogan can be censored and have to watch what he says, and he can't talk about vaccinations unless he's encouraging people to get vaccinations. That's the only way he can talk about them. If he can't talk about climate change for any other reason than to encourage the false narratives of what they call climate change, if he can't do anything but that, then that bothers me. Just like the same thing I was saying about you working for the United Nations, how anyone working for the United Nations doesn't know about the geoengineering project is what they call it, and how you could not know, and because it's all above your head all the time, is the reason why I say that. I mean, I watch thousands a day of people, thousands of people every day with this shit going on right above their head. And even when you point it out to them, talk to them about it, they will deny it. They run from it. They're not gonna look. So to expect them to look at the imagery, the true creator's work, or the creator's work, or the false creator's work, or try to explain any of it to them, that they can go see it for themselves, and my explanations are not even necessary, or you're not going to get any of that out of any of that. No fucking way. Yeah, there's a commercial on this one. So when I hear you say Joe Rogan, or Elon Musk, it really bothers me.
I saw a video the other day featuring an American surgeon bragging that he had performed more than 3,000 double mastectomies on young women who had paid for gender reassignment. Individuals confused, one might say encouraged, by those who profit from it into believing that their adolescent emotion.
Okay, so gender reassignment to you is okay when we're doing it with the food, because that's what we do, right? So the heavy metals and the minerals, if you're using the wrong heavy metals, for man, woman, judging by your color, your genes, if you will, all your scientific nonsense, you can read between the lines of it, and you can see that we obviously for a long time have been controlling the population with what we call food. We've turned food into a commodity. We have really beefed people up with the metallus, because we don't talk about the metallus. No one knows what it is. No one talks about the carbons, our electrical cells. We have forgotten our electrical cells, but I still trying to figure out if that was intentional, that our ancestors sold us out. Is that what happened? Or were they fooled first and then sold out after they were fooled and dumbed down? After one of the resets or something along those lines. I mean, there's a lot of questions I still have myself, but from what I can see so far, what I can see for myself, I can certainly go by what I can see with my own eyes. I don't have to keep going with the bullshit. These ones are going kind of fast, so let's leave them here. So as far as the transgender shit goes, why is it so? I mean, I agree with you. As a matter of fact, I have to remember to try to do all this in the form of a question. I will say that I think I can get away with saying that I agree with you about the rush to do surgeries, obviously on children, and anybody for that matter, but especially children, obviously. I mean, we're sexualizing them way too early in a lot of different ways, mentally, way before the time is done. So where was everybody back when it all began, right? So back 35, 40 years ago, the ideas were already coming into play of sexual education in the schools, right? We're going to start doing sex ed in schools, and why, especially the younger grades, and then it got younger and younger, and the lower grades were even starting to do it. Third grade, fourth grade, we're teaching sex ed to kids. Still don't make any fucking sense, but everybody's just kept going along with it. There's 7.8 billion zombies. I don't care what side of the political spectrum we fall on, conservative, liberal, democratic, liberal douche, whatever, far left, far right, doesn't matter. They all work together. We all work together in order to do this to ourselves. This is the sellout. This is the self-proclaimed, self-inflicted slavery. And I think all slavery was over the years this way, we went along with it. Everybody just goes along with, yeah, okay, it's better than dying, maybe, right? If you're told sometimes it's a matter of that, it's better than death, because we don't think there's any other way. There are many, many other ways that nobody's even looking at. I'm trying to show them to you. I hope that you come. I hope you're a real person, and I hope you'll be open-minded. You seem like you're going to be fine with dropping some of the ego in order to see this. So if that's the case and you're able to go look and you see it and you start understanding what it is, I think it'll happen real quick like this for somebody like yourself, to be able to put this all together. It's taken me 4 or 5 years to even put together, you know, pieces of it. But you have to be able to, in order to do that, you have to, first of all, I knew everything was a fucking lie. I already knew everything was a lie. I was already looking at that for years. The mineral streets was a big part of it, and it was a big part of why I even found the system in the first place, because I happened to be looking up in at a area that no one ever pays attention to. They leave it to meteorologists, they leave it to scientists and everything. Oh, that's another thing. You know, I hear you beefing up science and stuff like that. I got some really bad news for you, man. Science is just another religion. Most of the shit you're spouting out, Jordan, no offense, man, really, because I like you a lot. But a lot of the scientific garbage is the same thing as a lot of the religions. None of it's provable. It's not factual, but yet we claim it is. It's almost like what I was saying in the Candace Owens series. As far as the politics go, science goes the same way. It's the same thing. Because everybody agrees that it is that way, it becomes that way. That's how the zero got started. That was a huge mistake. That's how infinity got a good start. You know, it's a mistake. There's no such thing as zero and infinity except for in the human imagination. So the same thing goes for all the rest of the science and all the rest of the physics. Not saying that we have to rename the Higgs particle, but we can at least know what the Higgs particle really is. We can stop calling it the God particle, right? We can stop that. Or if we're going to add imagination to it and put human imagination and wording to it, at least let's say what it is. It's imagination. We imagine it, but we don't have to imagine anything anymore. We can see it all. We never did, actually. We never did. That was part of the trick. We didn't have to be using our imaginations the way we do. The theory was, over the years, people that were able to use their imagination could make things better, to invent things. Well, the things that they're inventing are hundreds of thousands of years outdated. They're garbage in our past, from our past. They really are. So when you know the true system, which obviously we had rights and use of this true system, because we still do, but you're going to have to get your head around the idea that weather is controlled by humans, meaning they influence it. We influence the electromagnetic currents. We influence the amount of heavy metals and minerals that are in our atmosphere, just like we control the rivers, the lakes, the oceans, and everything else. We control the heavy metals and the minerals all over the place on this earth. And we always have. It's just now we're told we do it for a different reason. So now we may, for example, control synthetics in order to make Tupperware bowls and tires and all these things that are, again, wasted energy. So you make the metals, even, for that matter. So we're using metals instead of using them for their magnetic ability or their electromagnetic ability. Instead of doing that, instead we build combustion engines with all this wasted energy that turn these engines that are turning a crank, which turn cams, which turn and push up and down push rods and pistons and everything else. Lots of friction going on, lots of energy being created, and then this combustion with gasoline and oils, to keep everything going. It's all waste. It's all waste. None of it was necessary. We have electromagnetic current we could have been using the entire time. That's what I mean about the technology being garbage. And then we pretend like that's going to be a future thing, hundreds of thousands of years from now. Yeah, maybe if you want to wait that fucking long. But meanwhile, while we're waiting, should we not face the facts that we fucked up with the wheel? That the wheel was not really such a great idea? Should we pretend that we didn't fuck up time and the clock and time itself on a human scale, big time? Should we pretend that these things didn't happen, all by simply adding zeros and circles And then we didn't even get into the alphabet because then we fucked up sound resonance when we added the O. When we added the O, then now every time we run O's out of our mouths that don't belong there, along with other letters that are in the alphabet, along with O, that we never should have had, we didn't need them, they were unnecessary. The O, the circle, and the zero are bad for us in every which way. Whether it's seeing the O on paper, assuming that everything is a circle, a O, and a zero, when really they never are. You know, we assume that we always talk about the moon being the moon's a circle. No, it's actually not, and neither is the sun. So we just claim that it is because the glare from the sun makes it look circular in our eyes. So we call it circular. We don't know what the shape is, and we don't even know what the entity is. But yet we claim that we do, and all. It's a bunch of fucking shit, man. So to keep hearing you plugging science and going up with something, maybe it's incidental. Maybe because you are just a product of your environment, the same way that the rest of us are, right? So maybe it's possible. But if that's the case, then I don't know. It's hard to say, man. You're so fucking smart that it's hard to say whether you seem so sincere. I don't know.
That he had performed more than 3,000 double mastectomies on young women who had paid for gender reassignment. Individuals confused, one might say encouraged, by those who profit from it into believing that their adolescent emotional trials can be cured and happiness reign forever if they subject themselves to this brutal practice, a process that often includes not only the aforementioned mastectomies, but other appalling surgical processes.
That's what I was starting to say, and then I cut myself off. The food. So if we're putting steroids in the milk and dairy and cheese and everything like that, we're beefing up the cows with steroids in order to get them as big as possible. We know that we've used anabolic steroids even for chicken and poultry and turkeys and everything fucking thing else. We've got so many. So where does your serotonin come in, I guess, is my question. Where does your serotonin come in when it comes to feminizing the human population, right? We'll call it feminizing, but in your opinion, and I kind of agree with you, that when you watch it with the lobsters, but see, the lobsters don't have a mirror neuron. That's the bigger problem. The animals that you're looking at, and the creatures you're looking at, which ones had the mirror neurons? You know this because you're more intelligent than I am. My memory's bad. Elephants, dolphins, humans, apes, different ape. I don't even know if it's all monkey and apes, but certain ape categories. Who else? Cats don't have mirror neurons. They're in the true creators list. You know, you see the imagery of the feline, canine, rodent, ape, human, and beast. That's all you see. So if so, I'd be curious about those kind of questions when that time comes. But I noticed that in your research, you're not really, except for the monkeys. There were some monkeys. I think it's very important that we include creatures that have a mirror neuron if we're going to be doing any of these tests. So to be pissed off about the transgenderism shit and everything like that, I understand that. I would too. I mean, the mutilization, the age group that they're going for, it's all purposeful. It's all part of tearing the country down, dividing everybody. The scariest part about it is like you guys are pointing out today, how many people go along with it. I'm in Massachusetts. I'm surrounded by it. I mean, seriously, man. I mean, everybody's liberal douchebag around here. So, what are you gonna do? You know, you just gotta stay calm, go about it. Every day I make these videos. Half of the videos I make get taken down because of shit that I say. I can't say anything. Can't talk anymore. Try showing it to people because it's visual. Can't get away with that either. I always find some reason to fucking take it down. There's so many things to talk about. I was thinking the other day, different videos that I got to make you. The LED light and how bad the LED light from these computer monitors, the cell phone. I'm forced to have to look at this shit too. My kids are dealing with it. The damage, the psychological damage that this LED light does to us is unfucking believable. why is no one talking about it? It's having an impact on sexuality. Okay, if I tell you that and you go look into it, would that make you feel better about it? Is the LED light have a neutral effect on sexuality? Make boys more girlish, girls more boyish? Sure to hell can. Same way that sound resonance can make an impact on it. So if you're changing the heavy metals and minerals and and have complete control, because the 7.8 billion zombies are all so intelligent that they will not go and look for themselves. They will not think for themselves. That's how intelligent they are. But whatever they teach them in school, whatever their family taught them, their parents taught them, even if you teach them, yeah, you're free to think the way you want. Look at all these heroes. Look at Edison, and you got people like this Elon Musk guy, and Joe Rogan, a political and savior or whatever you want to call them. All these heroes that get built. Donald Trump, president that saved the United States. Yeah, from a conservative outlook, and the conservative outlook is just, see, both sides have positive and negative, and you need a 50-50. So if one side, like the Democratic side right now, is going 80, right? They're going 80%, 90%. Now they're heading for 100% evil, right? So that's what they're doing. It doesn't mean that all Democratic people are evil. It just means the Democratic Party on a political scale to the conservatives has gone that way. Now, there have been times in history when the Republican Party has gone 80% evil, right? All the false flag shit that I was talking about in earlier videos and stuff. That's not just Democrats that do that. The Republicans are the ones that had the biggest part to do with all the false flags back when in the last depression, right? The wars and shit like that they put. The Republicans are responsible for the space nonsense. We give billions of dollars a year to NASA and Elon Musk over the last since the moon landings for sure, but even before then. And then every president that comes in spends even more billions and sometimes trillions of dollars. And this goes for a lot of other governments, not just the United States, but it's pretty ridiculous when you think about it. When you realize and wake up and you realize the whole thing was a bullshit story and it was all fake. And the biggest thing to get over is, come on, man, 7.8 billion people with all these geniuses that wrote all these books all these years and all these scientists. And you're going to tell me one fucking idiot from Massachusetts is going to come and tell me that they're all wrong? Yes, exactly what I'm doing. I'm telling you they're all liars. They have lied to you. It was purposeful. The question is, who was purposeful? Which ones were purposeful? We know for sure the Freemasons that came over from the Knights of the Round Table, and we know that definitely was one side of them. That's why I'm saying to you, Jordan, that check your own ancestry. You might have to face the facts. I mean, you might find some conservative Republican-based ancestry because it sounds like you do. I've heard you talk a little bit about it before, but I don't know what side they were on. Were they? Because they're all working together, but they're on different sides. It's all about division. We all divide. You know. And that's the way this whole system works. It's based on division. I was trying to explain in an earlier video, we are white, you and I. So we are cutters. We cut everything. If you look at things based on colors, and nationalities and shit are all going to come into play and everything like that, for all having our own specific jobs. For the creator and the false creator. Again, the true creator doesn't really care about any of this. This is all consciousness shit. This is all shit that I'm talking about in the conscious realm, because that's where politics, false math, false science, false religions, to sum them all up, they all live here. The truth about it all, the mechanicability of it, how mechanical it is, it's not wishy-washy like a genie or anything magical. Even though I don't understand the consciousness, the level of consciousness, because it's not even a consciousness, it's beyond that, the true creator I'm talking about. Size and you try to put it into your head and figure it out and say, okay, well, the size it is, where the veil goes, because we know that as you're figuring it out and as you're putting it all together, what you're about to see, then you're going to be thinking about that, and you're going to say, okay, well, where does the veil begin? Where does it end? What's the true creator responsible for, and at what level? In other words, how big? And then, of course, I can't go below physically, but I can go below using the true creator system, the one I'm trying to explain to Candace Owens in the last series, and then more to you now as we go forward. The true creator's energy, we all share it, so we can use that energy to go anywhere in here. It's just that I've only been learning about it more and more over the last few years since finding all this, more and more so. We can compare it to religious feelings, no doubt about it. And try to separate adrenaline flowing and why the adrenaline's flowing, what it's actually doing. Look at it more on an electrical side of things. The serotonin that you're talking about is could easily be used as experimental to figure these things out. Lots to figure out about what heavy metals and proper minerals for each individual creature, really. It's going to be big time. So there's plenty of work for everybody, and it will definitely happen very quickly if everybody goes and looks at the system. Because otherwise, if they don't know what they're looking for, and they're just still looking for the god with the big beard and sitting up in the clouds, and people still think that clouds are natural, and they believe in nature, that hurricanes, tornadoes, rain, droughts, they think this is all natural and this is nature. It's not nature. It's not. So far, I still don't have to ask that in the form of a question. I can still talk about it, but soon enough, I'm going to lose that privilege as well, and they won't allow me to even talk about even that. Am I at 46 minutes already? Yep. All right, I'll be back.